First of all, I do just want to put forward a resolution, again, per Standing Order 4.2, because we're now going to be going beyond 6.5 hours in the day. So can I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Councillor Price, seconded by Councillor Crystal. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And welcome to our submitters. Just to let you know, you have 10 minutes to do your presentation. That includes question time from councillors. We'll ring a bell at 5 minutes, just so you know you're halfway through, and then a double bell at 10 minutes. So I'd like to invite Carl Jaeger up to come and present first, please. Welcome, Carl.
How you doing? Now, I understand there's been a bit of a technical hitch and no one's actually got the copies of my submission, Councillor, and so I'll solve that as quickly as I can afterwards. But it's in relation to the traffic management safety plan as part of the long-term plan. Just a quick summary of it is that around about November 2015, when I moved into my property on William Street, within a very short period following that time, myself and my partner started to experience a lot of antisocial driving behaviour in the area. Now obviously this is a Napier-wide issue, but I can only speak to my own area. We've had a huge amount of excessive speed down our streets, sustained loss of traction, drifting, and various other forms of dangerous driving that occur from anywhere from late morning right through to the early hours of the morning. We've been woken at 2 or 3 in the morning with this sort of behaviour on a number of occasions. It's resulted in a lot of stress and lack of sleep over the years, including damage to property as well, with massive chunks of rubber, broken glass and various other parts of cars left up and down the street and around the intersection that our house is on. So the full submission is that from late 2015, early 2016, I began reporting these events to both the police and the council. And since that time, I've made probably in excess of 500 phone calls to both council and police in relation to this matter. 96 of these have been within the last 12 to 13 months. However, when I've been reporting to these matters to council, I've repeatedly been told that it's not their issue, that it's purely a police issue. Now, I understand obviously there is a separation of responsibility between road design and bad driving behaviour. I sort of feel that if council works better with the police on this matter, it's going to address the above issues that I've outlined and would assist all parties, the residents, police and obviously the council and wider community in my area to achieve a positive resolution. I'd just like to quickly add before I go on, I've got a number of my neighbours who I have been able to canvass that are supporting this submission. They don't want their names put to it, and I'll get to part of the reason why that is as well. Myself and my partner have witnessed firsthand a vehicle crashing through a fence approximately 100 metres down the road from our property. This happened about 3.5 years ago. There's also been the destruction of several police vehicles during a police chase involving a stolen vehicle. One of those vehicles was destroyed probably less than 30 metres from our fence, which is obviously a little bit unnerving. We've also had a car leave large skid marks right across the grass less than a metre from our fence, which is approximately probably 6 or 7 metres from our bedrooms while we were asleep. We were obviously woken up by this noise. So this is an ongoing and serious issue for us. Myself and the neighbours believe that it's very much a case of when, not if, these incidents result in a person or persons being killed. Myself and 2 of the close neighbours believe that the only solution to prevent this ongoing issues is to install speed humps and other control measures along the affected length of William Street, and the police have indicated to me on a number of occasions that they would support and endorse the installation of these speed humps or a similar traffic management solution. I've become aware that the council is proposing that a splitter is put in at the intersection of Ward and Williams. And while I applaud this being done, and it may prevent the drifting that happens regularly on that corner, it's not actually going to address the remaining issues, nor will it deter the large number of vehicles which use William Street as a racetrack. I've observed on numerous occasions vehicles driving at speeds that I estimate to be in the vicinity of 80 to 100 kilometres an hour. On at least one occasion, well in excess of probably 140 kilometres an hour. I could barely tell what colour the car was, let alone what type of car it was. To back that up, I have done a number of amateur racing while I was in the military, so I have a fairly good estimate of what sort of speeds these vehicles are doing. There's also been at least 2 or 3 occasions when I've observed 2 vehicles side by side drag racing up our street, and at least a dozen occasions where I've witnessed vehicles doing what they call trains, including drifting the corner from Ward Crescent blindly straight onto William Street, 1, 2, 3 cars close together, without any looking or any knowledge at the speed they were going of what could have been coming up or down the street. Given the length of time that this issue's remained unaddressed and the fact that it continues to cause risk and harm to the residents of William Street and the nearby streets, I urge Napier Council to give urgent priority resolving this issue. Since I put my submission in, I have tried to get more information from Council. I have struggled on a number of occasions and at times been told by the infrastructure team that under my thinking we might as well install speed humps down Kennedy Road. So it's been some quite sort of facetious comments that have come back to me from some of the staff in that team. However, recently I did receive information about the cost of solving this issue in relation to speed humps, and based on the information and the length of the street, the whole issue could be resolved for around about $18,000 or $20,000, absolutely maximum. That's probably an extreme cost, to be honest. It's probably closer to about 10 or 12K. I feel it's quite a small price to pay when information that I also gathered around the same time has told me that the cost of the courtesy crossings that have just been installed up on Marine Parade are in excess of $300,000. So I think, like 15K is really not that much to ask to make our streets safe. Since submitting, there's also been another incident where a vehicle was crashed into a fence less than 60 metres from our house. And although police were unable to give me details because it was still an active case in regards to the investigation, they did lead me to believe that speed was another likely factor in this crash. The vehicle was abandoned by the occupants before police did arrive at the scene. And I just think this is another reason that some of the neighbours and myself feel that this matter does really need some urgent resolution. I'd like to add that we've been suggested in the past to do wider canvassing and get more of the people in the neighbourhood on board. However, there's a large gang presence in our area and affiliates, and as a result, going around and canvassing these people when they are some of the people responsible for this behaviour is just not safe for myself or my family or our neighbours. I mean, today alone, this afternoon in fact, there's been another 2 vehicles that I've heard going past so fast that I couldn't even get off the couch quick enough to get out there to see what they were and try and provide details to police. And after 5 years, it's definitely making us consider selling our property and moving out of the area, because there just doesn't seem to be anything happening when I do contact council and police, and it's frustrating, I'm sure, from both sides. And from our side, it's definitely incredibly frustrating. I'm just wondering if there can be some sort of time frame that maybe gets put onto it to when it can actually be resolved. That's it.
Thank you, Carl. I'll open up for any questions from councillors. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Carl, for your submission. Just a really quick question, and you touched on it with the gang presence in the street, but is there an active neighbourhood support group that you have?
I'm actually one of the main members in that area for the neighbourhood support. They're one of the ones that got me the information about the splitter that's apparently being proposed to be put in. And they did suggest, they were another party that suggested that I canvass the wider area, but it's not safe. About probably, I would say within 100 metres of my house, there is about 3 other gang houses, some of which the police are actively pursuing, and the organised crime unit's actually tracking one of those properties as well. it's just not worth the risk, obviously, to myself, my property and my family to actively go around and knock on these doors and have someone then refer that I was the person asking these questions. Yeah, no worries.
Councillor Bogue.
Thank you for that, Carl. Yes, I'm one of your ward councillors. You'll notice that around Maraenui there's a lot of speed bumps and traffic calming, things that have been put in just in the last couple of years, and that was a result of the community working collegially with the council and looking at areas where there were speed issues, and there certainly is a lot of gang presence in Maraenui, but it's been done in a really good way. So usually what happens is the traffic department puts strips down and measures, how many cars, how fast, when, all that sort of thing. And if the evidence is that that a speed traffic calming is required, then it will be put in. I don't know if that's been done or not.
That was done probably about 2.5, 3 years ago. However, the strips are only down for, I think they've done it twice, and the maximum time they were down for 7 days. And unfortunately what tends to happen is that when I've contacted the police a number of occasions, they will step up their patrols and we'll have a week or 2 weeks where it's quite calm, even up to a month sometimes where it's not so bad, and then they just turn up again. And of course with the fact that they can listen in on the police bands fairly easily these days, even that sometimes by the time the police get there they're long gone. So it has been done. However, the issue with it is that those strips are set at a 10-kilometre base, and I got the report, and there were several vehicles that had been travelling in excess of 70 k's. I think there was 2 vehicles in excess of 90 kilometres an hour during that report in that time, and a number, as I say, in that 70 to 80, 85 mark. But the overall average speed turned out to be 53 kilometres an hour. So the infrastructure team said, basically, tough luck, this is the average speed, it's not dangerous. And I said it's those outliers that are the problem in relation to getting that safety put in there. The other problem is that a number of the vehicles that do crash in the street, the people or the vehicles themselves don't want to be seen or found, and before police can turn up on scene, those vehicles are pushed or taken or towed away from the scene without any police report. It's been an ongoing issue with, some of my neighbours have been there for 15, 20 years and they've had the same problems the whole time.
Sorry to hear about that.
Thank you very much for your time today, Carl.
No worries. Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Stuart McMillan to come and present, please.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Councillors. It's great to see you all. And I'm actually here to represent my parents, Stuart McMillan and Elizabeth McMillan, who are sitting down the back. We're here to talk about 13 North Street. So let me tell you a little bit about 13 North Street. It has a series of commercial warehouses at the base of the gully. The houses populate the ridge, similar Terrace, Havelock Road and Delhi Road. There is a tsunami walkway or pathway down that curved part where the slip face is mentioned, and in 2017 there was a fairly substantial slip there, which I'm just going to tell you a little bit about. So there was a reasonable rain event, only probably a quarter of what we had in the November floods last year. So there was about 300 cubes of soil fell down, and all the telecommunications and power services were exposed. Council's consultants at the time, Stantec, said it appears the landslip has been caused by blocked drains and sump from the overflow. The drains are likely to be blocked by leaves and vegetation washed down with the stormwater discharge. Now let me tell you a little bit more about that drain. It's an open drain that I showed you on that pathway coming down where that slip was. It's old, I don't know how old, 80, 100 years old. It was probably there when there was one house, a few houses, I'm not sure, but it's old. And it's rough, it's old, and the leaves all get stuck in this drain. And so how it works is that the water, as you can see with this bit of metal here, in a low rain event, it has to hit that rock, deflect off it, and then run down the hill, okay? So in a medium to heavy rain event, it doesn't work, because what happens is it comes straight out over there and just runs over the path over here and down where that slip happened in 2017. Okay, so it's not overly effective. It gets blocked all the time, so it requires council staff to go and clear it regularly. Opus also did a report for council at the time saying they suggested a remedy for that slip face was to do a L-unit gravity wall. Unfortunately, that was decided to do a do minimum approach, and the slip was cleared and plantings were planted. So it's just a little bit of background for you. So fast forward, it's a bit of a journey here. Fast forward to last year, my father did some earthworks in the eastern end of the gully, and he didn't know that he had to get a resource consent, so it was a mistake, and he's owned that since. In November we had the floods, and as you all know, what a disaster they were for the hill and other areas of Napier. So combined with them, the old stormwater system, and mixed with a whole lot of soil, we ended up with a mud swamp there. There were 15 unrelated slips to where Dad had done his earthwork, so I'll just show you a few samples of those. And then on the 21st of December, Mum and Dad got served an enforcement order right before Christmas. Now, that was to basically remedy the work that any risk of stability that Dad had uncovered with doing his earthworks. So they owned that, they took that on board. So 2 days after it got signed off, we didn't get even a chance to come and talk to you, but they got served another enforcement order by the Environment Court. So that was through council. And that was basically to own the instability of the whole basin. That's to put it right. But we've rejected that because we feel that there's some much wider stormwater issues in the area that just need to be looked at. What we know now, so let me take you on what's in front of us. We've got some broken vehicle crossings up here. So what happens is you can see by these arrows here, is the water runs down that curbing, and because of the negative angles and the broken vehicle crossings, the water deflects off and pours down the driveway down into the gully of 13 North Street. Where there's these plants that hang over and block the curbing up there. On the other side is Delhi Road, and basically the water comes down this hill, it runs into the sump, and then can't go anywhere because the pipes are blocked with concrete. So what happens is it bubbles up, deflects out, and runs down the neighbour's property back down into the gully. So here's just a few examples of what's going on up there. The capacity also is a problem. Up the top, it's got a 300 millimetre diameter. Down the bottom, right down the bottom at North Street, 200 millimetres. So the capacity is a bit of an issue there too. So Initia in their report to council basically said, and in that enforcement order said that there needed to be a collaboration between property owners and council for properties to upslope to discharge their stormwater. And they also noted that the land slippage was observed on 4 Havelock and 2 Delhi Road. This slippage is likely as a result of from the heavy rainfall in November. A landslip was also observed on 17 similar terrace. However, this is unlikely as a result of the uncontrolled earthworks on 13 North Street. So this is 4 Havelock Road, and the whole backyard pretty much came down the gully. On 17 similar, where I showed you that broken vehicle crossing, this is the result of that. Their whole driveway bank fell down, and their shed as well. So households up there need to discharge into the NCC network, stormwater network. Unfortunately, that's not happening in quite a number of cases, and it's possible the property owners actually aren't aware, so this is an example of that, where this pipe looks like a snake coming down their backyard, but it stops where the arrow is, and then the water just flows down the gully again. Also, this example here of a pipe under a deck, it's perforated with holes, so it acts like a sieve, I guess, and the water will flow out of that, it'll sprinkle along, land on that polythene cloth, and then down the backyard into the gully, so they're not discharging to the NCC stormwater network. So what are we asking for? We're just simply asking for someone to listen to us. My dad sent numerous emails over the last 4 years about this, but unfortunately hasn't got too far. We'd rather take a partnership approach with council on this, because we're going to get so much further if we do that. So I think, just in summary, what we see perhaps needs some attention is if someone could go up and inspect those houses along the ridgeline and have a look where they're not discharging stormwater correctly, and issue some notices to fix. If we could get the teams up there, like roading and infrastructure, to come and have a look at it, do an audit of the area, that would be fantastic. We understand these aren't all going to be fixed straight away, but it could be part of an approach that is staged. But the open drain is going to cause us problems every time there's a rain event, which is anything more than medium. And we're saying these floods only happen 1 in 200 years, but they seem to be happening we're getting some pretty serious rain events up there. And that open drain needs to be addressed, and some capacity issues like with those piping, it's just not working. And unfortunately, the focus has been put back on to my parents to fix, when I think we need to look at the bigger picture. And we just thank you for your time just to listen to us today. And I know Dad would appreciate just to have those open ears and just a chance to have a bit of a chat and dialogue. We certainly don't want the dispute stuff that's been going on. We want to work through this with you guys.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'll just open up to councillors for any questions that they may have. Councillor McGrath.
Just to clarify, is any of this still going through the courts or under investigation at all?
There's nothing going through the courts at the moment.
But no investigation or notices. Are we actually in a position to comment?
Well, we've talked to our lawyer about that, and there is nothing in the court at the moment.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you for your submission and your time to come and talk to us. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to read the management comments in response to this submission, and I suppose I'm just interested in your view. Part of that management comment is around North Street being a gully, and the way that the hill was designed, there will always be stormwater from above properties coming into that gully and therefore onto the side. Is that something that's accepted, or are you asking council, I suppose, to move to a fully piped system for all the existing discharges? Just trying to understand.
Do you want to answer that, Dan?
Yes, thank you for that question. The properties on Similar, all of them discharge to that drain going down the walkway. The ones on the eastern side, uphill, not one of them discharges to the street, where all their roofs are above roof line. So they could have a positive system which discharges to the street instead of down into my property, which is causing a nuisance. On the other side, on Delhi Road, we have got water coming down on the left-hand side, facing it, which goes into that grate, but on the right-hand side further up is another grate which goes on an angle to the left-hand side and then bubbles up and over the bank at 4 Delhi, which is causing the slippage down below. Further down on the right-hand side is a pipe that goes down the hill, so all that stormwater should go to that pipe and be directed down the hill. Now, there is 2 stormwater pipes which go through my property, 2 sewer pipes from council. So I just want somebody up there that I can talk to and say, this is wrong, how about fixing it? So there is some obvious things that need to be fixed, but nobody will listen to me.
I think to your point, I think in a gully situation there's always going to be some runoff, but I think the issue is it shouldn't be how it is, and it does need looking at. These, and I've pointed the obvious ones out, and Dad's been up there watching things for 4 years, so he's got a pretty good clue now what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
you.
taking the time to come and talk to us, and I understand
Thanks.
we've got a copy of your PowerPoint presentation
Mayor
which we
Kirsten.
can refer to take
Yeah,
away. So
thanks
thank
everyone.
You.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Syed Iqbal, Pakistan and Friends Hawke's Bay Association Incorporated, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and the councillors. My name is Sohail Sheikh. I'm a doctor at the DHB, and I'm president of Pakistan and Hawke's Bay Muslim Association. And Mr. Khurram and Mahmood are really big members of our community as well as the association. So what I want to talk about is about a need for having a mosque in Napier. We do have one in Hastings, and most of you have been there and truly supported us through difficult period, even post Christchurch event. But we believe there is a need for having one in Napier, and I want to give that, put it in this presentation, the need for it. So basically, looking at the long-term plan, I believe that in the area of development and financial contribution, that's where the City Council can support us. So we do know that altogether, based on 2018 census, there are about 57,000 plus Muslims in New Zealand, and that's about 24% up from 2013. and I'll talk about a little bit about the issues around true census in this area. According to the 2018, in Napier population is 62,000, and we do know out of that there are about 11% Pacific, Asian, Middle Eastern. So if you look at the Middle Eastern population, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are Muslims. When you look at Pacific, out of Pacific, among the Fijians, they're about 1/3 close to Muslims, around that. So when and according to the same census, it says that in Hawke's Bay, the Muslim population is 0.4%. So that doesn't really add up to the big equation. And I believe that the reason it doesn't add up to the big equation because many of these Muslims, especially in the refugee category, when they come from oppressed regimes, and so there is a level of fear of really putting it out there in the census that we belong to that category. So that's one aspect of it. And then some of them are just too busy in getting just their, the day-to-day stuff done. And they're not some of them are not very educated and don't get the support of really filling out these forms properly. So some of that issue comes up there also. We do know, however, there is Napier is a growing population, and we are getting good level of internal migration as well as people from overseas. Even in hospital, I see people coming from, some Muslims settled down, but they really don't know how to get any supports or and it's just word of mouth. Sometimes you find somebody who come in and say, they have some questions, what supports are available in the spiritual side in the community. And some of them make a decision about living in Hastings versus Napier based on where some of these supports available to them. So we do know that there is a kind of out of the Buddhists with 0.6% and Hinduism is 0.7% represented in New Zealand stats. So right now, as I mentioned, there is only one mosque in Hastings. We do know based on that NZ stats that New Zealand will become more ethically diverse in 2043 than in 2018 due to slower population growth for European and other groups and high level of natural increase or net migration from other ethnic groups. That's well known. So many don't want to identify, as I mentioned, due to background they come from. That is an issue with the census. Some are on temporary work permit, come from seasonal work. Many are Hastings residents that work in Napier also, and vice versa. And there is a growing Māori Muslim community also. Reality is that the Hastings Mosque is actually overcrowded during Ramadan. That lasts about a month. On Eids, which we have 2 of them in a year, and some Fridays. Some Muslim families find it hard to settle in Napier due to no mosque in close proximity. So why we need the mosque in Napier? Really, that's in a nutshell. We believe that we will host community events to promote participation of communities, promote tolerance, protection, and enhance partnership with other communities. Really goes very well with the Treaty of Waitangi principles, and we really want to promote that. Mosque will give us the platform where it is easier for us to support Napier residents who need a helping hand in the best way we can. So not only just to the Muslim community, but to the wider community, we want to be really good citizens in that area. Help retain professional and skilled Muslim workforce and families, as many see that as many of them see that as an essential aspect of their spiritual nourishment. Prevent overcrowding on occasions like Ramadan, Eid, and Friday prayers, which will reduce the risk of spread of certain infections. Mosque will provide platform for Muslim children to receive religious education like teachings of Quran and teachings of Muhammad, peace be upon him. My both children went to Rainier Catholic School in primary, and it was an integrated model. It truly works for them, and we over time, I hope we can do the same with this institution too. Convenience to Muslims working and living in Napier, and we will provide more opportunity to Napier residents to interact and participate in activities of the mosque. This will foster and promote community interaction and relationship. So at this moment, we started a trust, and so far this $34,000 sitting in that trust. We do know that once we have a land, we can start doing fundraising events, not only just in Hawke's Bay, but across the country for that. So we can work towards getting some of that capital flowing in. And we do know that community have people from all different walks of life and all different trades. They can also provide their volunteer effort into it, in making it work. But there is still gonna be a significant shortfall. And until that shortfall is met somehow, and we believe council can give us that support, we won't be able to materialize that. So immediate solution is allocate a temporary place to use as a Napier Mosque till a permanent solution get finalized. Just from people that only I know, there are about 40 people in Napier, Muslims, residents. These are just people I know. There are lots of people I don't know in person. So I don't know exact number we have in Napier, but it's actually growing. Long-term plan, believe if we can allocate, if the building is allocated and we upgrade it to meet its requirements, or consider leasing and leasing a land long-term for this purpose, and we can then raise funds. Council to provide expertise in structural, functional, and proportional aspects of the project. This will create both long-term commitment and partnership. And I truly believe our whole community truly believe we want to run this project as a community partnership spirit. So that's basically it, and thank you. Any questions?
Open up for questions from councillors. Thank you very much for your time. Oh, Councillor Bowe.
Sorry, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate, there isn't a mosque here in Napier. Where do people of your faith pray? Do they go over to Hastings, or do they just go to people's houses?
Hastings.
There is an issue right now which is facing, because I'm working in a multiple volunteer role. One side I'm working with the Office of Ethnic Community for the multilingual information translation. So I'm keep connecting in Napier with so many Muslim communities, those who are, the unconnected people, to connect with the community. So they are struggling with the COVID information, unknown in their information. They are not connected with the community. They have no information about if there is a flood, if there is something is happening, how to connect them and how to bridge them. So this is the platform we come up as a forward as a skilled migrant, and we are the professionals. We want to connect them with the connected people. So there are different populations are having their spiritual or the the Islamic practices in their individual homes, like the Arabic, the Middle Easterns, the Iraq and Iran and Afghanistani people. They are doing in the separate in a home, and the Pakistani peoples, those are in Napier. They are working on the office during the Friday times. They are going to a specific house in the Napier, and the few peoples who are traveling from Hastings to work in Napier, they are struggling. So the idea to bring the mosque is basically to connect the unconnected people, to help the Napier community to work as a family, to know the issues and work these things. This is one of the initiatives that it is not officially, but I will be the first Muslim Justice of Peace. I will be taking oath at the end of this month to bridge this gap, to connect the people who are having the language translation issues from the government side. Also, from this platform, we are helping the Royal Commission as an implementation representation from the Hawkesbury through ours. So we are trying to connect the connected peoples.
Just to add to that, so like for one-off events, we usually like hiring halls or doing it at community centres, just obviously where the population needs it. We can't always accommodate everyone in the Hastings Mosque, so we've been trying to do it locally within Napier at various halls.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to call on Richard Catley from the Pirami Residents Association. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm Richard Catley, and I'm making a submission on behalf of the Pirami Residents Association, which I chair. The Pirami Residents Association was founded in 2000 to provide a community voice for the southern Pirami area. We're a group representing residents, businesses, government and non-government organisations in the area, and we meet monthly to look at issues affecting our suburb. Thank you for the opportunity to speak face-to-face with you. We know all our ward councillors and many Napier City Council staff members well, as they regularly attend our meetings to listen to us and give us a better understanding of council services and initiatives, and to strengthen our shared teamwork approach to community matters. So it has become very noticeable in the last few years that Pirami has had a real shift in demographic, from mainly older residents to young families who have decided to make Pirami their home. We're also seeing more large sections subdivided to provide more housing. We see this as a good thing, as it uses space that might be considered surplus to many and reduce the demand for green space development. All this has caused us to have a look at the available green space in our area. We've always been firm on the position that Pirami has a severe lack of available green space in comparison to other areas of Napier. And a quick look at a Google map will highlight that. We're also concerned that while many of the users of the Allenbury Reserve also use the adjacent Ministry of Education land for recreation, they are very much unaware of the fact that it is not owned by council and it is at risk of being lost for housing or other such development. This, I know, would be a shock to many should that ever happen. So for the past 12 years, we've made submissions annually to council, which have included our request for the Allenbury Reserve to be extended into the adjacent Ministry of Education land, which was formerly the Pirami School. We have seen Mana Ahuri's development plans, which include acquiring the Pirami School site for housing as part of their $19.5 million treaty settlement claim. So I've attached at the back a little bit about that. The concept also included a land swap and moved some of the Allenbury Reserve into Crown land. Although we're not opposed to the development of housing per se in Pirami, we're respectfully asking council to work with the residents when considering supporting a plan involving moving a public reserve as part of such a development. The plan also reduces the existing road boundary to 1/3 of its current frontage. We do not think that this will make the reserve safe and accessible for our children, elders and residents. That then leads me on to the cross-country drain, and for the past 3 years many of you will be aware of the work the Pirami Residents Association have done with council to develop the drainage corridor known as the cross-country drain that runs from Uliet Road to Te Awa. So I've attached in my submission, that document that we submitted. We have been successful in seeing the new limestone path constructed. 3 new seats on the first part of the path along Harold Holt Avenue, and removal of the hedge for safety and reconstruction of the fence. This path has linked several existing paths and has now seen a significant increase in usage from both residents and others from outside of Pirami, young and old. We are currently planning a residents planting day to begin the task of developing one of the many planned native bush areas along the path to encourage the return of bird life and provide another area for residents to enjoy nature, relax and increase their mental, spiritual and cultural well-being. While this area is predominantly a drainage reserve, we feel Council should designate this corridor of land as a park for Napier. We believe it complements the currently proposed Ahuriri Regional Park. It will also enable us to better secure outside funding to continue to develop the native plantings, signage and seating through the protection provided under a park designation, all while providing a functioning, much needed stormwater catchment. We believe this will go some way to ease the lack of green space in Pirami. So what we are asking the Council for is that the Pirami Residents Association seeks to have any input into any reconfiguration of the Allenberry Reserve and Council's discussions with Mana Ahuriri on this and their housing proposal, and that the Council make the case on our behalf for extending the Allenberry Reserve into Crown-owned land, which Mana Ahuriri is getting as part of their treaty settlement, and that the Council create a new park for Napier with the current cross-country drain land. We hope to continue working constructively and collaboratively with you throughout your term of office. Thank you for considering our submission, and we look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'll just open up to councillors for any questions they may have.
Sorry, I had to read it.
It's quite all right.
Cool.
Councillor Tapani.
Greetings, Richard. Just wondering whether or not when you referred to the volume of green space in Pirami, historically I would agree with that assessment.
Yep.
But as a result of the work that you and the association have done with our team on the cross-country drain, would you say that the residents consider that new development a part of green space for Pirami, and does that still leave you short? Or
They're starting to, yeah, because we're certainly getting a lot of usage along there. What we're just wanting to be really careful of is that while it's great seeing all the backyards, I guess, getting developed into housing, we're going to have more and more people there, and if we lose land while gaining population, we're essentially going to miss out on some green space. So I guess the cross-country drain idea is a bit of a added protection to try and increase it.
but
we definitely need to keep something there in the way of extending the Allenberry Reserve.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Doesn't look like there's any more questions. I would just like to commend the Pirami Residents Association. They are one of our more active residents association, and well done on all the great work you do for your local community.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate everything the council does for us. So yeah, that's great.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
And I'll now invite Ella Philp from the Napier City Council Youth Council. Welcome, guys.
Exactly. Thank you. Nā koutou katoa. Evening, everyone. My name's Ella and this is Christian. We're both here on behalf of the Napier Youth Council. And so what we'd like to do this evening is really just kind of talk through what the Youth Council's kind of vibe on the long-term plan was, just to give you guys some insight into what youth think of the things that might be implemented in the future. Okay, so to start off with, I think, we think as a group that the development plan of the Ahuriri kind of like park area and natural reserve is super, super duper important, especially in a digital age where youth are ever more stuck to digital devices, locked indoors, doing this and that on their devices. So we think that's really important, not only to maintain our hauora and connection with the land, but also just as a space to just kind of chill and connect with other people. We also acknowledge that these developments will aid in the treatment of wastewater for Napier. And as a really environmentally focused group, we think this is super, super important. Yep. Faraday Centre, would you like to cover that one?
Yes. So the Faraday Centre, we are in support of keeping the Faraday Centre open. We did acknowledge in our council meeting that not a large amount of our councillors had actually visited the Faraday Centre, and we took this into consideration when making our decision. However, we see the Faraday Centre, I personally have been to the Faraday Centre, and the opinion on the council was that we see it as a historic part of history and a great resource that can be used to teach a little bit more about and keep us connected a little bit with our history. And that's about all we had on that.
And just on that, actually, just the fact that not many youth have been to the Faraday Centre may speak to evidence as to its accessibility for youth. So I think we did have a quick squiz at its hours, and it wasn't really, it didn't accommodate out of hours, after school hours for students. So we think that's really important to increase the accessibility of this resource, which is really a really powerful educative tool for youth. Something that we did briefly chat about was the street management program that you guys were proposing, which I think it was individuals kind of walking around and seeing what's going on. We were somewhat apprehensive on this idea. Although we do acknowledge that there may be a need for this program, we feel as if we do have individuals walking around and kind of patrolling the streets, that youth may be targeted or stereotyped as youth or youth that disrupt the peace of Napier. So if you were to go ahead in this process, we would absolutely appreciate the consideration of youth voice and incorporation of youth into the design process, if at all possible, just to avoid that kind of like stereotyping of the demographic. The Te Pahinga Centre in Maraenui was also discussed, and we were all very strongly in agreement with this design and idea and its implementation. However, we really what's the word? Favoured? No. Oh, gosh. Okay, right. We thought that it was really necessary that a strong youth lens be applied to the centre, particularly in education, so cultural education regarding tikanga, education regarding what you can do after school, and perhaps even little courses on just little things to learn for you, directed at youth, especially in this area, especially as we are kind of like the people that are going to be running the city after you guys. So, yep. Hopefully.
You got a date for that?
We're coming for your job, Richard.
Yeah, exactly. We're coming for you guys. Yep. Sorry, we forgot. Okay. So the chlorine solution. So yes, do you wanna cover this one?
Sure. Hang on, let me read my notes here from the council. Yes, the chlorine solution. We decided as a council that chlorine-free was not potentially what we personally favoured. We discussed the previous system, which was, I believe, chlorine-free, and how that all kind of turned into our current system where we do have chlorine, and we did discuss that even with the chlorine system there would need to be a filtration system in place. What we were a little bit concerned about was if this system was to be put into place, what would we have to prevent potentially what led us to be in this situation in the first place, and why we are currently using the system we are, where we do chlorinate the water. And yep, that's all I had to say. Would you like to comment?
So just to touch up on that slightly, the Youth Council really viewed chlorine as part of the solution and not a problem, although it is an inconvenience for many residents. we see it as kind of something that is perhaps part of modern life, and that although the development of facilities to cleanse the water would definitely benefit some residents, we thought that overall it's something that it's a really large investment which may not actually have a payoff significant to justify the investment. So we thought maybe chlorine might be something that needs to unfortunately say.
Our comments, yes.
Oh, yes.
This is my turn. So we did have a further comment around recycling. We, as the Napier Youth Council, see recycling as a very important, well, not issue, aspect, yes, of the council, and we would really like for that to be promoted more. We discussed about the multiple bins, and a lot of us were kind of shocked to learn that if, say, plastic gets into the glass recycling, it's actually all just put into the same spot. So we would like to really promote and educate, well, maybe not educate, promote recycling is a main focus that we had in our meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to add?
Yeah. So one aspect that we did brush up on in our meeting was that we'd like to stop the problem at the source. So that may be the producers of the waste, so businesses and manufacturers within Napier. So we thought it would be a really nice idea to maybe use some of our marketing resources to promote good recycling practices in these businesses, such that our residents aren't really faced with dealing with the waste produced from these manufacturers and producers. I think that's about it. Thank you so much for listening, guys.
No, thank you very much for coming to make your submission. I'll just open up to the councillors for any questions they may have.
Greetings, councillors.
Hey, yeah.
Enviro Schools had an submission earlier on today, and we were talking about where they've expanded into a number of schools. In your own experience, have you had an opportunity to work, not necessarily as councillors, but as students, to work within Enviro Schools, or any projects that may have encouraged you to work, or no?
No, I haven't. I'm at Napier Girls.
Yeah, I'm at Napier. I can't speak on behalf of some of our other councillors, but at Napier Boys we have not had.
So that's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Cool.
Definitely. Thank you. Sweet as.
Right.
Thank you.
I think that's us. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you. Shoot, I'm off the
Just
table.
going to clarify how many supers is it? I heard. I think it was 2 and 3.
I heard at least three.
I'd now like to invite Johan Ellers to present, please. Welcome, Johan.
Afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. My submission's really about 2 points. The first one is about the Te Awa area, and the second one is about the wider capital plan. So I'm taking an interest in Te Awa, which is a follow-on from last year's submission, where on behalf of a developer we are interested to work out what the capital expenditure in Te Awa will be to service the structure plan area, and specifically for stormwater, because there are changes afoot as far as the servicing solutions are concerned, which looks like this particular developer who paid about $2 million towards stormwater contributions. It appears that a chunk of that money is no longer needed, since the council only takes financial contributions for actual projects it needs to fund to service the development, the council will have no use for that money, and it should be refunded to the developer. So after last year's submission, the council said that the information will be contained in this year's LTP, so I took an interest in reading the LTP, and just more than half of the council's capital plan is contained in 4 one-liners. So 1 line for roads, 1 line for water, 1 line for stormwater, 1 line for sewerage, which is more than half of council's planned spend on capital, which for next year is 34 million, which is basically looks like blank checks. So I put a query into council's offices, and they responded really quickly with a breakdown of the projects that make up these $34 million worth of expenditure. But unfortunately, for the Tiawa structure plan area, it again came out as one-liners. So I asked again, and the officers did come back to me, which was really good. But basically, what it boiled down to was that they are still working out what this money will be used for. There's some guidance. There's a planning report that was done by the WSP that gives some clues as to what the stormwater solution will look like, but the actual cost breakdown for the various projects isn't there yet. So it's a work in progress, so with more time, I'm sure we will get there. But, and I think this is where I need to, to talk to you as councillors, that you've signed off on a draft capital plan that contains all these one-liners for more than half of your capital spend. Now, when it comes to the capital spend, it is big money, and at the end of the year, you will receive a report that basically shows how the actual expenditure went against plan. Now, if you don't have a breakdown of the capital projects in your plan, then how do you hold your chief executive responsible for actual performance? Because there's nothing to measure against apart from one-liners to say that the plan was to spend 10 million on water supply, but which projects and what is each project's budget? So it's really concerning that in the past the council's capital plans always contained a level of detail which it simply does not. So, so what I would say to you as councillors is that you have to insist on the officers providing you with the information you need to be able to monitor performance. So that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you, Johan. I'll open up for questions from councillors. No? Okay. Thank you very much for coming to present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Johan.
Now invite Brent Stevenson to present, please. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Dr. Brent Stevenson. I'm an ornithologist, guide, photographer and author, and I've conducted bird surveys and assessments over the last 2 decades for the Department of Conservation, Cape Sanctuary, Hawke's Bay Regional Council and Napier City Council, amongst other entities, and have been a member of Birds New Zealand since I was a teenager. It was as a teenager that I was first introduced to the Ahuriri estuary and its bird life. My submission and attendance here today focuses on the proposed Ahuriri Regional Park. As per my submission to both Hawke's Bay Regional Council and Napier City Council, I've said no to the proposal as it stands on the following grounds. Number one, a lack of stakeholder involvement and consultation. Whilst the concept of a regional park seems like a step in the right direction for many reasons, the speed with which this seems to have been made public and the lack of public and stakeholder consultation and discussion doesn't seem appropriate. Some of the stakeholders who have been left out of discussions to date currently manage and administer land included within the proposed regional park. Yet their first indication of this proposal was at the time of the public release. The lack of consultation with the Department of Conservation does not seem in line with a focus on biodiversity and wildlife, nor their role as managers of conservation estate within the proposed area. This does not mention other notable, not to mention other notable environmental groups with a long history of involvement at the Ahuriri estuary, including the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society, Birds New Zealand and Forest and Bird. All of these stakeholders have a history of past involvement in development decisions in and around the estuary, and there is little excuse for them to not being asked to the table prior to this proposal going to the submission stage. I realise it was perhaps a discussion document to get a discussion underway, but I feel that it would have been advantageous to have talked with various stakeholders prior to this. Lack of a clear plan and intent. At the time of seeking submissions, a clear plan and proposal was lacking, but surely is an essential part of securing support. After all, what are we agreeing to or disagreeing with? Especially when the intent and reason for the proposal seems unclear. There seem to be inconsistencies in the language describing the regional park and a lack of clarity around why it is being proposed. The use of catchphrases such as recreation, pollution, and stormwater appear prominently in some documents and media, and in others the use of wildlife and biodiversity, and sometimes all of these together. But there doesn't seem to be a clear idea of which comes first or which concepts are more important. Perhaps this lack of consistency is a product of no focused plan. This does not sit well with somebody who has seen development in and around the estuary over the last few decades where wildlife values have almost always come last. In some cases, plans have changed last minute with no consultation or happened against sound ecological advice, resulting in negative ecological impacts on the environment of the estuary. For example, tree planting at the southern marsh and positioning of the bike path adjacent to it, and the expressway bridge design being just 2 examples. In other development, recreation values have been primary drivers and changes made reluctantly and at the last minute due to wildlife concerns. These have barely avoided what would have been catastrophic impacts on wildlife values. For example, redesigning the bike path route in the upper estuary. With the current poor ecological state of the estuary, it is not hard to see that wildlife has not been a priority to date, and so with such a loose concept plan, why should we believe it is now? I believe there is a strong case for the creation of a regional park, however, and that can start to address the serious impacts the City of Napier and surrounding land use are having on Ahuriri estuary. A regional park could positively impact biodiversity and wildlife values, but we need to be open and honest about what the real intent of such a regional park is. I doubt there are many people who have addressed this room and said they disagree with giving the Ahuriri estuary better protection from the pollution, stormwater discharge and sewage release that have occurred and will continue to occur. But is the creation of a regional park really addressing these issues or just hiding them? Are we hiding statutory obligations behind words such as wildlife, biodiversity and recreation to make such proposals more popular? If we are serious about protecting, restoring and creating habitat for wildlife, then we need to start out with a clear understanding of what it is we are trying to achieve. Part of this is understanding what has existed historically and currently exists at the estuary. Schematic drawings I have seen associated with the proposal show the southern marsh area stock banks being removed and allowing tidal water to invade. This shows a significant misunderstanding of what this fragile non-tidal wetland habitat is, and is just the sort of thing that creates apprehension about the intent of the proposal and the level of understanding amongst those making decisions. Furthermore, although planting of native trees and shrubs could be beneficial in some areas, this estuarine environment was never a forest, and tree planting should be approached cautiously and with an adequate understanding of the ecosystem. It is imperative that the appropriate people are at the table to make informed decisions for the estuary, for wildlife values and for the long-term success of the biodiversity in this fragile environment. The scant information shared to date does not promote confidence. Perhaps, as I say, it was just a discussion document to start that discussion, but I think there could have been better efforts made in undertaking that initial step. Recreation or wildlife. Whilst these two catchphrases have been used extensively throughout this proposal, they do not always go hand in hand. Some parts of the estuary, especially the upper estuary, have a very high wildlife value, and in large part because access is restricted and the recreation within these areas kept to a minimum. Other parts of the estuary currently have high levels of recreation and use by people, Embankment Bridge and the Pandora Pond area, for example, and these could easily continue. There is the potential for sustainably developing some of these areas with education facilities, increased signage and interpretation and focused recreation. And this sort of development in the right place would be a win for the community and for the estuary, creating ambassadors who understand and care for this fragile ecosystem. Furthermore, if wildlife values are to be intended as a serious reason for this proposal, then a reform of the current dog bylaws in this area is essential. It is not appropriate for a blind eye to continue to be turned to the harassment of protected wildlife by dogs in this area or any part of the estuary. I strongly urge reform, if any weight is to be placed on elevating the wildlife values of this site. There needs to be a clear understanding that providing access and recreation in certain parts of the estuary is not an option. Recreation in the upper estuary in particular will have a significant negative impact on critically endangered species, and these areas will fail as the last vestiges of wildlife habitat for some species, such as bittern, should pathways, boardwalks and viewing platforms be pushed into these sensitive areas. There are people who have spent decades working on restoring the habitats in these areas and the species that occupy them, and they should be listened to. Wetlands and wetland habitats, whether present now or to be part of the restoration of this area, should be places for wildlife to flourish, not places for people to have open access to. So the future. Although my stance is to say no to the current proposal, I'm not saying no to having a discussion, drawing up a plan with a clear focus and consulting with the appropriate stakeholders who will oversee a positive outcome for wildlife values and biodiversity. As somebody who understands the ecology of the estuary, I feel that if a regional park is to be created with wildlife values and biodiversity at the forefront, then this needs to be done right. The estuary is a shadow of its former self, and some well-meaning but ill-informed decisions now could cost the estuary its last significant habitats. All this to provide another space that looks appealing, provides recreation and makes people feel good, but that results in the loss of the special things that are barely managing to hang on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Brent. I'll just open up to councillors for questions. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. That was great to hear your submission and read your submission. I suppose there's so much in there, and I'd like to extend the invitation to have a conversation offline as well about the regional park. But I did want to reassure you, I suppose, up front that the regional park concept came from the Ahuriri Master Plan, which was consulted with all of those people in 2017 that you mentioned. And I also wanted to reassure you, because I know there was a little bit of confusion with the wording and some of the overlays, I think, in some of our consultation documents, that the proposed regional park is just the Napier City Council owned lagoon farm, so not any of those other land holdings that you mentioned. All of the concerns that you raised in your submission, I didn't hear any that were invalid. I think they are all really, really pertinent to this project. And I also wanted to reassure you that what Council was consulting on was whether or not we put money towards developing, as you say, a vision which gets those clear principles up front, and developing a master plan with all those parties. So just wanted to reassure you, I suppose, of those. And that all of your concerns are really valid and are part of our thinking for this project. So thank you again for your submission. It was, very well researched, and you obviously have a passion for this place. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you for the comment. I think I think possibly there just has been a breakdown in communication over the whole project, and I understand the connection between the 2017 and the current. But I think there has been a lack of communication in the interim, and I guess it's the stakeholders that were initially sort of discussed with, and then all of a sudden a new plan without that connection. So I'd urge everyone to reach out and make those connections good again, because if we don't, the result will not be as good as it could have been.
Yes, and I can reassure you alongside the Deputy Mayor that absolutely this is just very much a concept at this stage to put forward so that we can make a decision about investing that money. So we will definitely be re-engaging with all of those key stakeholders and Mana Whenua and Hawke's Bay Regional Council extensively in terms of any further development.
Great.
Thank you very much for your time today. I'd like to invite Bernie Kelly to present, please.
Good evening, and at the risk of it being Groundhog Day, it was very good to listen to Brent there. I'm Bernie Kelly. I'm the regional representative for Birds New Zealand and Hawke's Bay, and just submitting to your 10-year plan on the regional, the proposed regional park for Ahuriri Estuary. So Birds New Zealand is a national organisation that fosters the study and enjoyment of birds. There are branches based in all of the regions around New Zealand, and we have a group of members based here in Hawke's Bay. For the purposes of this submission, we are supportive of the plan to elevate the conservation status of the Ahuriri Estuary to a regional park. We know that this plan will need a collaboration between local government agencies and interest groups to assess just how this new regional park will look and what activities will be planned. Birds New Zealand has a long-standing role at the estuary, gathering bird count data in the form of national data census, which gets twice yearly winter-summer counts of birds at different sites across the estuary. That's been going on for a long, long time, and it's included in part of that goes right across New Zealand as well. So all the regions do these census counts. So we have quite a lot of data, and that's used. That can be used by councils. And is used by councils. So the estuary has a wide range of bird life, which include a good range of migratory waders, wetland birds, and nationally critical Australasian bittern. The habitats that exist at the estuary are essential to the survival of some of these species, so any plans to alter that habitat, be it in the form of more public access or increased recreational activities, will have a detrimental effect. While we support the idea of more public awareness and the Council's plan to improve water quality at the estuary, it must also understand that avian wildlife also needs protected areas to allow breeding and survival. Any alteration to existing tidal and in-stream flow will need careful and considered decisions that will need input from organisations such as Birds New Zealand. going forward, it would be our hope that Birds New Zealand, Hawke's Bay, along with other NGOs, will play a part in any planning around the shape and outcomes within the estuary. So I've kind of listened to your comments around Brent's submission, and they were, and so you won't have to repeat yourself there. That's kind of what we had thought the process was, that it is a concept at the moment, but and I know that there's Mana Ahuriri, Regional Council, Department of Conservation. Those are the government organisations, but we also as our group, we're really supportive of the Ahuriri Estuary Society and Forest and Bird as well. So we're liaising with them all the time. So actually, with everybody's input, we should actually be able to come up with something that's pretty good. But you know, I guess it's just that we're quite worried because we have actually seen regional park status given to Waitangi out at Awatota there, and I live in Clive, but I have. It can be a double-edged sword. There can be. It's a good thing, and you see some good things going on, but boy, you can see some really quite things that shouldn't really be happening. So it really needs some considered thought and be aware of that. So, but I know the Ahuriri Estuary for the Napier City Council is front. You know, it's a pretty important part of the region, and Birds New Zealand have actually participated in some of your events that you have organised there, and we've had some really good things come out of that. Yeah, as I say, I'm just here just to represent, just to focus on that Birds New Zealand component. That's all I can do. That's my mandate there. But we are supportive of some of the other organisations, and as I say, people like Brent who are coming to advocate for the Ahuriri Estuary. So that's my submission, really.
Thank you very much, Bernie, and I can already see that Councillor Tapeni over here would like to ask a question.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So you're the lucky recipient of the shortest question of the year for me.
Yes.
It only happens once a year. The data you referred to earlier on in your submission around the counts, could you remind me where I would be able to access that data?
Yes, you can access that data. It's just an email to the executive of Birds New Zealand, an executive officer to Birds New Zealand. All that data is actually owned by Birds New Zealand, so you're going to have to pay for it. But it's not going to break the bank. But there are other forms of data that are being collected now in terms of, we have you wouldn't have heard of eBird, but that's a phone-based bird counting. And so council, ecologists are using that data as well. And Birds New Zealand are currently running a 5-year project on atlasing all of New Zealand. So that's counting birds right across New Zealand. So there are avenues, but certainly the Ahuriri Estuary bird count data, and I think they may have actually even accessed some of that for the Watchman Road roundabout project. So that was a thing that actually worked pretty well. They had good outcomes. For across the everybody. So I'm kind of always hopeful that these things can actually go pretty well. So, but as I say, we're here just to be noticed and want to be part of the plan. And we've got some members here who are actively counting birds and enjoying birds in the Ahuriri Estuary. So we'd hate to see anything go awry.
Yeah. And again, just to extend that reassurance that we would absolutely love for you to be involved as this develops, if the commitment is made to invest the money in the area.
Yeah, great. No, thanks very much. Thanks for allowing me to come in today and talk. So,
thank you very much, Bernie.
Okay, thank you.
Could Councillor Tiffany share that information when he gets it?
Yeah, can I hit you up for a loan, Councillor McGrath?
Okay, we have our last submitters of the day, Susan Wiley and Joanna Rogers from Friends of Napier Library. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Joanna Rogers, Chairman of the Friends of Napier Library.
And I'm Susan Wiley, Deputy Chair.
Mostly what we have to say is thank you very much for everything that you are doing for the library. I've been part of the proposals for the the redevelopment of the Civic Centre, and I've been impressed with what's been done and how quickly you're trying to move things along. I know it's a long process, but yeah, definitely lots of planning going in before we even got consultants in to come and help, which all made the process move along much more quickly than it possibly could have. So I'm very, very happy with all of that that's going on. I know there's still people who go, yes, but we just want the library back. So we just, as fast as it can go, we'll be very happy. One of the things we wanted to talk about was library staff. So at the moment, the library have 2 extra staff who have been, they're temporarily funded by the National Library of New Zealand, and it was part of the COVID project. But what we have been seeing is how wonderful it has been for the library to have these 2 extra staff. And the literacy work they're doing, the digital literacy for older people, the job seeking for people who don't necessarily have the things in their own homes, the computers and the ways of being able to apply for jobs, improving te reo. And so we would actually like to push the library, the council to think about continuing to fund those 2 staff after the government stops paying for them, because we think that actually they are providing a wonderful service. And I know that councils don't always like to add extra staff because that's a long-term commitment. It's not like one building project that is a finite thing, but to be able to use the new library, I think you're going to need those new staff as well, and to be able to provide all the things that you want to do. So that's our push, is for you to contemplate keeping those 2 extra staff as part of being able to take the library out to the community and being able to encourage the community to use all the resources that are in the library. Do you want to talk about the holiday?
I'll briefly just touch on the holiday program. You may not be aware that the Eastern and Central Community Trust would generously funded the holiday program for 3 years. That's come to an end. So in the submission that I put together for the Friends after our discussion, we would like councillors with your contacts in the community to consider any businesses or funders whom would be interested in supporting the holiday program. It provides a great opportunity for a lot of children to improve their reading, take books back into their families, read together, and then there's this fabulous celebration. I know some of you councillors have been, celebration at the end. And it supports their overall education. Schools can't do everything. The library does a fantastic job, and it probably helps a heck of a lot of parents as well. We're looking to think who could be a funder for the program, but councillors, you're in good positions to think of really great people who would just love to have their brand or their name attached to such an excellent program. Thank you.
So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can see Councillor McGrath's got a question for you.
Because I'm all over libraries. You are. What sort of figure are you chasing for the holiday program? Because I know I've been involved with it in the past, and it's a hugely successful program.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how much Darren said that they were getting from the Eastern and Central. I know that some of the library, Friends of the Library, consider it maybe more than is necessarily. I think they were looking at about 80,000 a year, which I think is not necessarily as much as you need, because some of us older people think that you only need smaller incentives, but you need to keep it running is what we need. And so I think you'll have to talk with Darren. He'll definitely give you facts, figures, and all the numbers. What we are here is just to say that we want it to keep going, and we want it to be as successful as it has been for about the past 10 years.
Any further questions? Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
So I now adjourn the meeting till 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.